Again, my name is Franco. I'm a physical therapist at our River North Clinic. We practice the REVI method here at React Physical Therapy, and if for those of you that are not former patients or are unfamiliar, it's a whole body approach, hands-on treatment to identify kind of muscle imbalances, some weaknesses, and identifying which structures may be kind of doing too much work, which structures may not be doing enough work. Balancing that out, building some strength to kind of get you back doing what you like to do. We have 6 locations for React Physical Therapy, 4 in the Chicagoland proper and then 2 in the northern suburbs. We are open for telehealth and in-person clinic visits. All of our staff members are kind of taking all the proper precautions, wearing masks. We ask that our patients do the same, taking daily temperature checks, using extra sanitary precautions to make sure that everything's safe, and kind of keeping the appointment spread out enough so that we can manage the patient flow in a safe manner for everybody. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the physical therapy practices or just have never been to physical therapy in general, the state of Illinois now allows what is called direct access, meaning that you can come see a physical therapist without a referral from a physician. What we do as a courtesy for all of our patients as they call and try to schedule is that we will gather your insurance information and verify those benefits for you to kind of ensure and double check that no referral is needed for that. We do also offer cash rate packages. And I think the biggest thing that we can offer in general for those of you that maybe have questions or aren't sure if physical therapy is right for you, we do offer free injury consultations. We can do those obviously via telehealth, but also in person too, to kind of take a look at what might be ailing you and kind of talk through whether or not physical therapy is appropriate for you. All right, so we're gonna jump in. I do have a lecture that I'll share my screen with periodically and talk about the topic for today, which is dealing with low back pain. And then I'm also gonna talk a little bit about kind of returning to that pre-quarantine shape or maybe the routine that you had prior to the lockdown that has been occurring. Obviously, we've had to modify some of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis and alter our exercise routine. Or if, for those of you that maybe are interested in kind of adding an exercise routine or kind of becoming a little bit more active, this will kind of tie into that as well. Just give me a second here. I'm going to share my screen with you. All right. So dealing with low back pain. So today's agenda, learning how React can help you. We're going to talk about the ways to self-manage low back pain and how to return to pre-quarantine routine. At React Physical Therapy, we offer an individualized and whole body approach to physical therapy. We focus using our hands with soft tissue release, joint mobilizations to focus, to balance the body, to promote pain-free movement. How can React help with pain? Give us a call. Give us a chance to perform a free consultation for you, kind of walk you through the steps of what may be going on. We are all trained and our background allows us to identify those root causes of pain. Our primary goal is to reduce pain so that you can get back to the activity that you love doing. We want to resume activity. We don't want to take too long of breaks in between kind of the onset of pain or injury. And I'll delve a little bit more into this, but basically what we want to do is that, the old adage of just, rest, especially with low back pain. A huge proponent of this back in the day with rehab was if you have back pain, just kind of lay down and do nothing for a few days. When we've actually found that the opposite is kind of better for us. We want to stay active. What that means though is that we may have to modify certain behaviors, patterns, or movements that are kind of triggering or increasing our pain. And I'll talk about some ways to kind of modify those activities for you. And then we want to build strength and resilience. After the hands-on treatment that we do, we want to, empower you, educate you on how to maximize your soft tissue work kind of at home via a crossball, foam roller, or another soft tissue management tool. So a couple things that I want to talk about too is kind of just about pain in general. A lot of times we're not quite sure why we are in pain. Pain is not quite as simple as that we once thought, where I bumped my knee hurts, that's why my knee hurts. Back pain specifically can be a little bit more tricky, where it's not necessarily bending and lifting something heavy off the ground or twisting and carrying to pick something up that is triggering our back pain. So some kind of just background information about what pain kind of means is that our bodies have this internal defense system. And oftentimes when that is triggered, our body perceives a threat that kind of sets off these pain signals. And that's kind of why we are able to experience and sense the sensation of pain. Another kind of reason that some pain may be brought upon is that we do more than our body is capable of handling. Meaning that, for example, if you are a runner and you typically like to run 1 to 2 miles, if you were all of a sudden to take a few weeks off and then decide that you wanted to run 5 miles, your body is going to be very angry with you. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be doing any long-term or permanent damage, but the stress that you're placing on your body, since you were unprepared and unfamiliar with kind of handling that longer distance mileage, now your body is just letting you know. So it's kind of sending those warning signals that, hey, you did something a little bit unusual, or you're doing too much for us to handle, which kind of talks about my next point, placing too much stress on the body too quickly. I can't forget who had the quote, but something in the rehab and fitness world is, when it comes to pain, is that we do too much too fast after doing not enough for a long period of time. Again, if we're inactive or we're not used to a certain activity, and then we try to ramp it up really quick again, or try to get back into that shape, or try to lose weight or hit the weights really hard on a short period of time without giving our body the proper warm-up and progressive nature, that's when we can trigger some pain patterns. So the first thing that we want to do when we are in pain is we want to take a deep breath and keep our body moving. So let's say you wake up in the morning and you're experiencing some back pain and you're like, oh, this is really stiff. I don't know what I did last night. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. Sometimes in the middle of the night, while we're sleeping, we toss and turn. We may have laid down a funky way. Maybe we didn't get good quality REM sleep. There's a lot of different factors that can contribute into why we're feeling stiff. The best thing you can do is try to take a deep breath and get the body moving. Our body craves movement and activity. We want to stay active. If you are working out, try to modify your symptoms. Let's say you typically work out for 45 minutes to 60 minutes, but you feel like your body is starting to get tired, or that pain's ramping up in that 30-minute mark or 25-minute mark. It's okay to stop for that day. It's important to kind of listen to your body when you're unfamiliar, when new pain kind of creeps up. Inactivity can lead the body to become stiff and rigid. Obviously, our body isn't as active at night, so when we wake up, it's more likely that our joints and our muscles feel tight and stiff, just simply due to the fact that we've been sleeping. Another big thing that you can do when pain occurs is finding a position and or movements that are more comfortable for you. For example, obviously a lot of people, or a vast majority of folks, are still working from home. If you aren't equipped with a home office and a comfortable computer chair, you may be finding yourself on the couch, at the dining room table, at the kitchen island, on different surfaces. All those different surfaces, different setups can make your body uncomfortable, since that's not your normal routine. So some just facts about low back pain. It's very, very common to have bouts of back pain throughout our life that can last 2 to 6 weeks. Now, that doesn't mean that entirety of that length span you're going to be in severe pain, or that you're going to be to the point where you can't stay active. All that means is that on some metric with research is that in that time frame, somebody identified a pain number above 0. Now, the thing with pain scales, I know a lot of us at React, if you're a patient of ours, or if you've seen a doctor in the office, we often talk about rate your pain, right? 0 out of 10, 10 being you need to go to the emergency room, 0 meaning I have no pain. that pain scale is unique to you and only you, meaning that your 3 out of 10 pain threshold is very different than myself and very different than other peers your age based on what you do. So that's, you know, pain is one factor and the main factor that most patients come to see us, but it's not the only thing we want to identify and look at, okay? Most back pain is not serious. And what I mean by not serious is that non-life threatening. Now, there are some things that you want to be aware of when it comes that things that are associated with low back pain. Some changes in bowel or bladder kind of periods. If you find that in conjunction with low back pain, that could be a sign that there may be something a little bit more significant going on. If you're having any numbness or tingling kind of below the waistline, into the legs, into the feet, that's not going away with a positional change, meaning it's staying there in a constant fashion. That's also something that we kind of want to be monitoring a little closer. And the biggest thing that I want to say with pain is that time will help pain resolve. Now, that doesn't mean that in 6 weeks, if we do nothing to kind of address that pain, if we don't keep our activity level up, if we don't kind of work on some soft tissue stuff, if we don't build that strength and mobility back, yes, for some people, time may kind of allow that to heal. But for those of you that have been experiencing pain for, you know, longer than that kind of time frame, we would quantify that as kind of getting into that chronic stage of discomfort or pain where we have to look at some other factors besides just kind of structural things. So kind of the philosophy that we use and a systematic approach that we use at React is releasing. So what we're doing through our hands-on approach is kind of allowing the muscle kind of tone that we feel, that really tense, tight sensation that we feel in our muscles, we're getting that to calm down, which will allow us to kind of lengthen our muscles, which will in turn allow our joints to feel a little bit looser. We mobilize. Mobilize meaning that we're providing some movement through our joints. So if you see my finger here, we have obviously bones throughout our entire body. Mobilizing means providing some movement, some gliding in those joints to create more movement. Activate. What we want to do is prime our muscles for activity. So activations are kind of some techniques that will lengthen our muscles. Our muscles can contract and get shorter or lengthen and get longer. So the activation kind of techniques will allow those muscles to kind of wake up, prime themselves in a lengthened fashion. We want to strengthen. The biggest thing we can do, our hands-on approach to treatment does relieve pain. It does make us feel better. It does allow our patients to come up off the table and say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling better. I can move a little bit freer. I'm not as stiff. My pain has gone away. The strengthening component is crucial for developing new patterns. We can do all the hands-on treatment we want. We can do all the soft tissue releases with foam rollers and lacrosse balls. But if we don't change those patterns through their strengthening techniques, we can kind of revert. So the strengthening component that our physical therapists do with our patients is important. And then building endurance. And there's a couple different scenarios with endurance. Obviously, cardiovascular endurance. If your goal is to increase your running distance or increase your mileage or increase your capacity, let's say you just want to walk a little bit longer. You want to make that 20-minute walk commute to work. Now that the weather's a little nicer, we want to build those stepping stones so that you can increase the endurance capacity of your muscles and your body so that you can do more over time. So some releases that I want to talk about. Now, the releases that I'm talking about here and a vast majority of the exercises that I will be kind of referring to, you can also locate on our YouTube page. So if you go to YouTube and type in React Physical Therapy, most of these associated kind of topics will have videos and demos for you. But I'm going to kind of take you through some quick instructional of how to kind of target these specific groups, because we found that these muscle groups are particularly important when dealing with low back pain. So I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit there. So we're going to use a lacrosse ball. We're going to approach the hip flexor first. So first thing that we want to do to identify this is find your belly button and your hip bone. You're going to want to kind of dissect that line there lacrosse ball just inside the hip bone, okay? I'm gonna go over to the mat here. So as I have it just inside the hip bone here, I'm gonna lay on my belly and kind of sink in. As I sink in there, just giving myself a minute to get comfortable with that pressure. I'm gonna bend the knee and rotate at the hip. Now, the main thing to realize when we do soft tissue work on ourselves is that we don't want it to be painful or more painful than we usually have. It may be uncomfortable and the pressure may be intolerable for a few seconds, but we don't want it to be inducing pain that we haven't experienced or making our symptoms worse. And with this, when we kind of approach these, for smaller muscle groups, we want to spend maybe 30 seconds to a minute in that area. And again, if you're kind of going inside that hip bone, you may have to move it up and down or around to find that sweet spot or that comfortable spot. Next area that we're going to talk about are the quads. Now, obviously, there's 4 different muscle groups that make up the quads, but for the purpose of this, we'll talk about just kind of the center stone, the middle of our thigh, and the outer portion of our thigh. So I'm going to do my right hip facing here. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to kind of lay down on top of that. I'm going to roll until I find a pressure spot that feels tense or tight. I'm going to pause at that spot, and then we're going to actively move. So we're going to kick back and forth. We're performing the motion or the action of that muscle group. Again, you're going to spend 5, 6, 7 seconds in that area, finding another tight spot, kicking back and forth. Okay? Now, a lot of this will be different for each of you. This is going to be trial and error in terms of finding those areas that are more tense than others. Obviously, we want to spend a little bit more time and focus on the areas that are tightest or feel the most restricted to us while we're doing this. Okay? So I talked about the middle part of the thigh. We'll talk about the outer portion of the thigh. So I'm going to face you now. So now I'm kind of laying on the outside part of my thigh. Again, I'm finding this, kind of rolling until I find that area that's a little tight, pausing, kicking back and forth. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with our hands-on technique or any instruction for reactive therapy, a lot of folks just kind of roll back and forth like this. There's nothing wrong with that. The things that I'm showing you just best mimic our hands-on treatment and allow you to kind of get a little bit more specific on those muscle groups. Now, you can approach the larger muscle groups, and so I use a foam roller with quads. You can use a lacrosse ball. I will caution you though, if you haven't done the releasing with the foam roller, to try not to use the lacrosse ball just yet. Because it's smaller, so the surface area is going to create a little bit more tension. Okay? So we've talked about the hip flexor with the lacrosse ball. We've talked about the middle and the outer quads with the foam roller. Now I'm going to demonstrate the inner thighs, or what we call the adductor region of the groin muscles. I'm going to use a kettlebell. I like that person. You can use a foam roller for that. You can't use a lacrosse ball for that. Okay? If you do have access to a kettlebell, that's great. Okay? So here, I'm just laying a top leg on top of it. You would do the similar process with the foam roller and the lacrosse ball. Okay, so you're just kind of in the side position here, top leg on either instrument that you're using. Applying gravity is going to help you with the downward pressure. We're just kicking back and forth. Okay? With all the releases, we kind of want to work through the entire length of that muscle. Okay, so I started kind of downward, we're really kind of starting that upper groin and work your way down. Again, we're going to do 5, 6, 7 repetitions. We're going to do 10, 15 seconds in an area, and then move on. Okay? Again, these videos can be found on our YouTube page. I'm going to go back to our lacrosse ball, and we're going to look and work on our glute muscles.
Hey, Franco.
Here.
Franco, can you hear me?
And I'm going to come underneath here. Now I'm sitting and putting the ball directly in the middle, let my butt kind of cover it. Kind of on the outer portion, so that I'm kind of sitting on that corner piece. And then we're going to rotate. Moving up a little bit toward kind of the upper part of the head. Now again, if we go too far kind of in the center or the loose, that's where our sciatic nerve is. So if we kind of sit on top of it, that could cause kind of that electric lightning feeling of pins and needles. So that's why we kind of stay on the outer portion of that. For the hamstrings, I'm going to grab my stool here just for demonstration purposes. But with this, you want to find a firm surface. So a desk chair, a dining room table chair. Using the lacrosse ball here, we're going to sit just below the glute region, kind of our sit bone. Apply some downward pressure. Now, obviously, in this is a very soft seat, so the ball is sinking down. But on a firmer seat, the pressure will kind of go up into the hamstring. So we're going to move and kick it back and forth. Okay. I'm going to work my way down to just above kind of the knee. Okay, the last one in our release group for low back pain is the QL. So the QL is kind of a rectangular muscle that's on either side of the spine. It goes upward in a rectangle like that. So what we can do is place the ball just on either side of the spine, just above the elbow. Again, with all of these releases, you want to be on soft structures. So on our muscle, not on our bones. That's going to be very uncomfortable. So with the QL, kind of go just above that hip bone on the outer portion. And you can do two different things here. You can kind of bring your knee to your chest, or you can rotate side to side here. Either way is fine. You may find one more comfortable or more tolerable than the other. Mobilizations. So I'm going to show you a couple different techniques. There's a variety of different ways that we can approach these areas, but I'm just going to show you the most basic, simple ones that you guys can repeat at home. So the thoracic spine is kind of the middle of our back. Our spine is kind of segmented into three different areas. Our cervical spine, which is the neck, our thoracic spine, which is kind of a vast majority of our back, and our lumbar spine. So for our thoracic spine, a good mobilization that I like to do is called an open books or a sideline rotation, and I'm going to demonstrate that. So lying on your side, I'm going to kind of bring my legs up here. We're keeping the feet at the bench position, hips stacked together. From this position, I'm opening up my top hand and letting my head follow while keeping my hips stationary. You want to pillow underneath, or kind of having your head and your bottom arm next line. Kind of rotating and opening up that mid back. Again, all the movement is occurring from the waist up. Okay? Some good lumbar spine, so the low back mobilizations. So there's two different ones. We're going to do an extension base, so bending backward base motion, and a flexion, so a curving one. The first one is called a cat cow. So we kind of let the low back kind of arch a little bit. Now, if you're having pain with extension or that shrinking motion, this may be a little uncomfortable for you at first, but there's ways to kind of work into this. Okay? We're kind of going to let that belly drop, kind of arching that low back, and then kind of tucking and rounding. Okay, we're going to arch, tucking and rounding. Okay, you're going to want to start with rounds of 10 to 15 of these, but work for a range of motion that's comfortable for you. Okay, so another good kind of mobilization for this, now would be like a bending motion. So we're going to get our hands underneath. Now we're just dropping our butt to our heel and kind of letting that stretch. So now we're kind of gapping or creating some openness in that spot. Again, with low back pain, oftentimes we have a direction that is more comfortable. So we want to encourage that movement first to kind of dampen that pain in full effect. Some mobilizations at the hip. A good one is a half kneel position here. Okay, so in this position here, my leg is down. What I'm going to do is engage my abdominals, squeeze my glutes, so I kind of tuck my pelvis in a nice straight line here. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be driving my opposite leg forward, noting that I'm keeping this as straight as possible. You'll feel a little bit of stretch kind of in the top part of the thigh here, but this is a good way to kind of open up the hips. Okay. Now for the ankles. The ankle, having mobility at the ankles will allow us to kind of move a little bit freer, especially with things like sitting to stand or squatting motions, things where we really need the feet to kind of help us out. So I'm going to face you here again. We're in this half kneel position. All I'm doing now is I'm driving this knee as far as I can over my toes while keeping my heel on the ground. Now with these mobilizations, again, I would start with a set of 10 or 15, kind of seeing how you feel. So our activation sequence, for those of you that haven't done this, I'm going to kind of quickly take you through three main things we want to activate. The four-way lunge, which is going to address the hips. The three-way good mornings, which is for our hamstrings. And the glute ladder, which is for our glutes, obviously. So the four-way lunge, we're going to be in a staggered stance, kind of 90-degree angle, 90-degree angle. Okay? So from this position, elbows tucked in back to kind of keep our upright torso here. I'm bending at the waist. Okay. So that's variation one. Variation two is a rotation. Okay. Variation three is bending. Again, all the bending is occurring from the waist up. So again, front to back, rotation, side bending, part four, up and down. Okay. Now with these, what I would recommend, if this is the first time or you're new to this, is doing a round of 10 on one leg and then switching. So there's 4 different variations. You want to alternate legs so that we're not fatiguing that one leg. Again, this is to kind of open up the hips. Our next exercise is the good mornings. This is a hinging motion. So with this, I'm going to show you from the side. What we want to do is keep a nice flat back, elbows tucked in. Relaxed knees, meaning just slightly bent, not completely stiff. We're driving our hips backwards. So our hips are acting as if they're a car door open. I want to tap it to shut it. Okay? So again, arms down and back, using our hips to kind of hinge and coming up. The three-way part comes in because we're going to alter our feet position. So with our feet facing straight, we're going to hit kind of that middle portion of the hamstring. We're then going to rotate our feet out for a round of 10 or 15, and then we're going to rotate our feet in to kind of hit the different parts of the hamstring. Okay? Now an exercise that I really, really like for the glutes is called the glute ladder. Now with this, we're going to take a resistance band just above the knees. Okay? Now most of you have done some variation if you're familiar with this or have been active of a bridge. So this is just using that bridging motion, meaning kind of pressing up through our glutes. That's going to be the foundation for this. So that the glute ladder is just sequencing. So you can start, I would recommend starting in that 5 to 7 rep range. So what that means is if I wanted to start at 7, we're going to work from 7, 6, 5, 4, all the way down. So that's that ladder sequence. So I would do 7 bridges. I want you guys to all go a little slower than that. And I would hold that bridge and do 7 outward pulses. Okay? And then I'd work my way down. So that you would start with 7 bridges. On the 7th rep of that bridge, hold it, 7 outward flutters. Take a second or two to relax. 6 bridges. On the 6th one, all the way down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Strengthening. Moderate resistance training 2 to 3 times a week for 30 minutes is going to be super beneficial. Just to kind of help with any sort of pain, but specifically the low back pain. The thing with low back pain is that over the course of time, we've also found that there's not one specific culprit. A lot of times the hip flexors or the core is kind of blamed for, the foundation of low back pain. Now, while those areas may be undertrained and weak, that may be true. Whole body strengthening is very, very good and key to kind of maintaining that healthiness in the low back pain. From a strengthening standpoint, you want to be consistent and patient. That's the biggest thing that I stress with all my patients in terms of education, is that it takes time to kind of build changes. Now, some of those you may see quick changes right away in terms of pain reduction, but in terms of kind of building strength or like capacity to move on to a new or more advanced exercise, that may take some time. There's no magic exercise, meaning that there's not one specific thing that can be tailored to every individual that is going to allow you to kind of reduce that low back pain. It's a variation, and that's why, seeking out a physical therapist and coming to React, we can identify which exercises are best for you and how to kind of progressively monitor those exercises and changing those as they see fit for you. We want to manage our symptoms. As I was saying, pain is kind of an alert system, kind of a threat to our body. So pain is not always a bad thing. It's a precursor to knowing, okay, something might not be right, or I may be doing a little bit too much too soon. Monitoring a 24-hour pain pattern. When we're in pain and you come into physical therapy and we do some hands-on treatment and we start to do some exercises, you may feel sore or uncomfortable, or you may feel great when you leave, but your pain may come back that next day. Monitoring a 24-hour pain pattern means, okay, after I've done some activity, how does that feel over the next 24 hours? Does it kind of peak and then kind of get better back to that baseline? And that's okay, because sometimes as we're kind of navigating early on to see what exercises or what motions are triggers, we may kind of flare some things up. So it's not always that you're taking a step backwards when we notice some discomfort with exercises or movement. Staying active. Your body craves movement. So if you're sitting at home all day, kind of trying to work through that 8 or 10 hour day, kind of changing positions. If you're sitting, get up every 30 to 45 minutes, even if it's, for a couple minutes, move around, get those joints and those muscles moving, get that blood pumping through our system. An analogy that I like to use is a stoplight analogy that for kind of pain symptoms and kind of threshold with exercising. So with this, again, this is kind of going to be only unique to you based on how your symptoms feel and how your pain scale is for your injury and your low back pain. So in the green kind of segment, that 0 to 3, you're in the clear, meaning that you're safe to kind of continue your exercise as you see fit. If it's intense and you're starting to feel a little discomfort, proceed. You can kind of keep up with that. We're really not worried about that. When it starts to ramp into that yellow phase, that's 4 to 6 discomfort, we want to use caution, like a yellow light. We want to kind of see, okay, did I put extra weight? Did I put extra resistance on this technique? Did I do an extra set? Did I do more reps? What did we change that may have brought on this discomfort? And it may not have been anything. It might just be that your body is not capable of handling that stress for that activity that day. Now, if we're in that red zone, that 7 to 10, we want to stop. Meaning that there's something going on that, your body just really, really doesn't like, and that's where we don't want to push into that excessive amount of pain, because that can really lead to some lingering effects. So a little bit about returning to your pre-quarantine shape. You want to start slow and be consistent. If you were hitting the gym and did a workout class every day, or you were, doing a heavier weight training program, and you had to modify with bands or some other lightweight things, you might want to cut that resistance or weight by half when you go back. We want to see how your body can adapt to that new stress. We don't want to just go straight back to what we did, back in mid-March. Okay. Slowly progress as you monitor symptoms, meaning that, let's say you go back in and you cut that weight and resistance by 50% that first week. Maybe you can bump it up a little bit that second week, depending on how your body acclimates to that. And you want to be patient, like everything else. That ramp up time to kind of get us back to where we were is going to take a little extra time to get us there. Some other things that I kind of wanted to talk about that I was mulling over before this that I didn't include in my slides, which I will share with you, is that there's a lot of other factors besides just like the structural nature. So like bones, joints, muscles, all those things that I was talking about that could be kind of triggers of why we have the pain that we're having. Other external environmental factors, the stressors that we have on a day-to-day basis. Maybe your job is putting increased demands on you now that you're able to work from home. So that stress of that job that maybe you in an 8-hour day you were able to kind of handle that workload, but now through emails and Zoom calls, your demands and your work schedule has increased fourfold. So now you just have this pressure on you that can affect kind of our homeostatic position and how our body manifests our pain threshold. Personal stress. If you have kids or a spouse or a significant other, or, you had a fight with maybe your good friend or some other, personal stress or, loss or disconnection with somebody, those things can kind of weigh heavily on our body and manifest in physical symptoms. So kind of monitoring that will kind of help you navigate this as well. Sleep quality. Sleep is extremely important for kind of pain and pain reduction. If you're only sleeping 4 hours a night, 5 hours a night, and you're not getting good quality solid sleep, or you're up every so once in a while. My wife and I, we have a 5-month-old baby, so I'm up quite a bit at night. So I've definitely noticed that when I'm not able to get pockets of good sleep, I'm more susceptible for kind of those low to moderate level aches in my back. So sleep quality is huge. Your diet. Obviously, we've been stuck at home. Maybe, some of you, if you don't cook, or you're ordering out a lot more, or you're having more fatty or processed foods, or your alcohol intake has increased. Those are all factors that will manifest in how your body responds to stressors. So kind of being cognizant of those are all things that, you want to take into account. And again, these are things that we can help be your advocates for if you come in to see a physical therapist at React. In summary, I just want to make sure that I cover everything, and so I'm not taking too much of your time. Back pain is very common, but it's very treatable. Staying active is good for our bodies. Being consistent and staying patient are crucial during these times, even though it's very, very hard to do so. And then allow React to help you. Again, we are open for in-person and telehealth visits. We are more than happy to talk to you or discuss kind of any new or ongoing pain that you may be experiencing, or maybe you're just looking to explore and become a little bit more active and you're not really sure where to start. We can be that kind of stepping stone for you. Again, my name is Franco. I'm at our River North Clinic, which is at 300 West Ontario. You can contact me via phone, email, or our social media account, River North React. But I'm going to exit this kind of screen and see if doesn't look like there's any other things else. If there's any other questions that you guys may have, again, this video demonstration and lecture will be available on our website, www.breact.com. If you look at our events and resources area, you can find the audio as well as the visual component with this. And again, I just wanted to thank you all for your time. And best of luck with everything, and don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions.